Next Pats podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. Great episode lined up for you this week. We've got our good friend from the Boston Sports Journal, Mike Giardi, with us to answer 5 burning questions at the midway point for the Patriots 2023 season. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the dysfunction that maybe has blown through New England, and I'm sure they're hoping is not here to stay. But we're going to be talking about what does the future look like for Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick? What does the future look like for this Patriots coaching staff and front office setup? Who is the future core for this team? What are some of the future free agent decisions that this team is going to have to make? And which players should the Patriots be prioritizing when it comes to their own free agents? So it's a wide-ranging, fascinating discussion with Mike, who obviously has covered this team for a long time, covered Bill Belichick for a long time, but also knows, obviously, the league at large as well as he does, and so can give us some perspective as far as that goes in terms of where the Patriots should be going. What are some of the best teams in football doing right now that the Patriots aren't? So this is a lot of fun, this conversation that we have with Mike. On the other side, we're going to be talking about the Patriots and their offensive scheme specifically, because there's a little bit of a follow-up that I want to do based off of earlier this week and the Patriots Talk podcast conversation that we had with Kevin Clark of ESPN. And is the Patriots offense a dinosaur? Really? Can it work in 2023 and beyond? I have some fascinating numbers to throw at you in terms of just how modern this thing is here and elsewhere, where some Patriots-alike offenses have been functioning. But before we get to that, here's our conversation with Giardi. There he is. There's the man from the Boston Sports Journal, Mike Giardi. Michael, thank you for being with us here, sir.
Phil, thank you for having me.
Okay, so I was thinking maybe we would do a crystal ball segment with you, sort of steal an early edition device. Then I was thinking maybe we do 5 burning questions for Mike Giardi, but I'm thinking maybe we just do 5 burning questions for Mike Giardi's crystal ball.
Look at that. Smash it all together. That's why you're the creative. You're just a genius.
Why not both? Why not both?
I like it.
Right? So let's start here because there's a bit of dysfunction blowing through Foxborough, and I think they're hoping it's blowing through. It may be here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. But 2 corners late to the hotel on Saturday, both benched for the start of Sunday's loss to the Commanders. J.C. Jackson has irked Bill Belichick to the point where he is not even with the team as we speak right now. Wasn't at practice at Gillette Stadium on Wednesday. My assumption is he won't be there for practice on Thursday. We're taping before that, and then is not going with the team on the trip to Germany. Jack Jones, though, he's back, so good on him. Let's start here, though. Here's question number 1 for your crystal ball. Understanding the level of dysfunction that has taken hold of the organization through the first half of 2023 here, and however far back you want to go. You are Robert Kraft. What would it take for you to relieve Bill Belichick of his duties, or at least part ways in some way, shape, or form at the end of the year?
I mean, I'm already there if I'm Robert Kraft. If I am Robert and Jonathan, and whether I want to communicate this to Bill or not, you're playing out the string, bud. This is it. When it's over, however you want to do this, do we want to, find the elegant solution, as Robert likes to say, or is it a straight firing? Do we try to trade you? Whatever it may be, like, they should already be there. This is now 4 years removed from Tom, and it's not gotten better. It's gotten worse. Coaching decisions, player acquisition, player development. It's all messed up, and it's phenomenal run, right? Like, you can't take that part of it away from him, but he's not that guy anymore. This isn't that team anymore. This isn't that organization anymore. It's time to blow it out and start over.
Follow up. Do you think they're there? You said if you were Robert Kraft, you'd be there. Do you think Robert Kraft is there?
So, Phil, I keep coming back to this. Like, Bill's definitely on notice. I think he knows he's on notice. But Robert has talked tough for 3 straight off seasons And for 3 straight off seasons, and then he's like, move the goalpost each time. It's like, well, we got to win playoff games. Well, we just got to get to the playoffs. Now we just got to have a winning record. And so for me, my concern would be that Robert, when push comes to shove, just won't do it. He'll give him one more chance. Bill will plead his case and he'll get one more chance. That's just my fear. So it's a kind of a cop-out, but I'm just like, until it happens, I'm just not going to believe it's going to happen. I think it should. I think everybody thinks it should. But, when it comes to it, will Robert do it?
I wonder if all of the talk, all of the saber rattling, if that in some way makes it more likely that he does it. Like at some point, does he feel as though he has to follow through, or else his words ring hollow? Maybe he's felt it. Man, I really have given this guy a pass. I've been trying to make the postseason the last handful of seasons here, and we're not even doing that. So I wonder if that in any way, shape, or form makes it more likely. But you're right. History is what it is, and Robert Kraft's been speaking a certain way, and Bill Belichick's obviously still the head coach here. All right, on to question number 2 for your crystal ball. I wish you had a crystal ball. How do you not have one? Look at that shelf behind you. You got all that cool stuff back there. You have a single crystal ball back there?
I have a Johnny Pesky signed baseball.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you want to use that?
Yeah, sure.
Let's just tap into that. Whatever magic is in that thing. What is the next coaching / front office structure for the New England Patriots? And I guess we should specify before you lay this on us. Is this if Mike Giardi was calling the shots or if Robert Kraft is calling the shots?
How about if I give you both? So if it's Mike Giardi, it's the old Patriot way. It's gone. Everybody's out. I'm bringing in I'm bringing in a GM who isn't from here, and I'm bringing in a coach who isn't from here. It's time to sort of join the league, and the way the league has gone the last 5 to 10 years that you haven't gone, it's time to join that. I think you look around and you see, particularly how teams play offensive football. That's what they need to do here. Their team is not only is their team bad, but their team is boring. And you can't really sell that product. Now, what I think Robert's going to do, and I think you're with me at least on this, I think Gerard Mayo is going to be the next guy. And I think they think Gerard has the potential to be special. And there's loyalty there. Obviously, we know the contract situation and convincing him to stick around, and clearly feels like that's the succession plan. Now, what they do at GM, man, like, once again, if I'm them, obviously you want to have your head coach and your GM aligned. But if Mayo is already in place as the de facto, as the next guy, and that's already like agreed to, even though legally they can't do that just yet, but whatever, you know what I'm saying? I don't know then how you bring in someone from outside the organization. I think they need a fresh set of eyes on how they approach this, but I don't know how you do that if Mayo is still here, because then you're asking the GM to accept we go through this all the time. And I think you've seen all the bad organizations, all the years that Miami, the Jets, and the Bills, for instance, in your division have chased you for those 20 years. What did they do? You hire a coach, he and the GM don't get along, the GM gets fired, new GM comes in, he doesn't like the coach is gone, now he brings in his head coach, then the cycle was over, and then the quarterback on top of that too. But it was like the cycle was repeated over and over again. Every 2-3 years, these teams were blowing out a GM or a head coach and starting over, never mind the quarterback. So there has to be some synergy. There has to be a lot of synergy there, actually, I think. But also the ability to tell Gerard, like, no, that's not the right way to do it. But for Gerard to be able to push back and say, no, this is why I think it's they need to have that dialogue, where I think, as we've known for 20-something years, there's been a lot of times where Bill they don't push back. There's not enough pushback. And I think to have a healthy organization, to have a successful one, I think they need that too.
So here's where I would go with this. I look at the coaching hires. One was an extension, one was a hire made last offseason. I think both were ownership driven. I think the owners committed to both Gerard Mayo and Bill O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think because that has already happened, and because even if both units are underperforming, it's actually surprising to me that even the defense, and I know some of the points scored or points allowed numbers are impacted by a pick six or a fumble six that the Patriots offense has given up. But I believe they're 26th in points allowed this year, which surprises me even with me understanding, okay, they've had two massive losses in Christian Gonzalez and Matthew Judon. So the fact that they're that far down, I think is disappointing. I think the Patriots defense in general has been disappointing the last couple of weeks. Coverage busts, missed tackles. So they're not performing well. And some of that has to fall on Gerard Mayo. And he took it on this past week when he met with reporters. Offensively, clearly, they're at the bottom in a lot of different statistical categories. But I have made a commitment to both of those guys. And I think both, if I'm Robert, right, I'm putting myself in his shoes. I believe both of those individuals can have success in this league. And so this year has been dysfunctional. I'm not going to completely hold it against them. The defense in particular has been really good in years past, with Gerard Mayo basically running the show and Steve Belichick calling the plays. So if I'm Robert Kraft, what I might be looking at is a Gerard Mayo as head coach, Bill O'Brien remaining as an offensive coordinator, and allowing them to in some way, and I don't know, I mentioned the word dysfunction earlier. You may say this is dysfunctional. I may allow them in some way to, and maybe it's just Gerard, and he's sort of in some way speaking for Bill O'Brien if he believes in the offense and how things are set up and how he coaches. But I would allow them to have some say in who the front office person is, the point person. And this would still be a coaching-led football operation to me. But the evaluation, the talent evaluation, which I think has been this team's biggest problem over the last several years, would be left to someone who is capable and proven that he or she can do that. So whether it's Adam Peters, who our guy Mike Reese has mentioned multiple times on the radio, 98.5 The Sports Hub. He was with the Patriots, actually, their front office during the earlier 2000s. Broncos, now Niners since 2017. They've had some massive, massive hits in the draft since he's been there. I don't know how much influence he's had on those drafts, but if he understands what he's looking at, okay, Gerard, you like big linebackers, right? You don't want Marte Mapu playing linebacker for you. You'd rather have Jelani Tavai and Juwan Bentley. All right. I understand that. I understand what we're trying to do defensively here. Bill O'Brien, you want a quarterback who can work out of empty, who can process, has a little bit bigger arm than maybe you've had the last year here. Okay, let's make that work. Let's figure that out. I can go do that. That's in a perfect world. And that might be too small a needle to try to thread. But in a perfect world, that might be what I'm looking for again, because I've already committed to those two guys and I believe in what they can do. And if I bring in a front office guy who's going to say, hey, Gerard, here's what you like at strong safety now, buddy.
Yeah.
I don't know how does that go? So is that a crazy plan on my behalf?
No, but it is. You are right. You are trying to thread the needle pretty finely there. The interesting thing to me, too, I think
it would be a Niners. Honestly, Mike, it would be kind of a Niners model. Kyle Shanahan, who's really kind of the guy with power there, right?
For sure.
And John Lynch and his staff do the evaluations. Could that work? Could that work with a really, really young and relatively inexperienced head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. Look, if they, again, I think you and I both feel, I say they think that Gerard has the potential to be special. I think you and I feel that way too. Like he's young enough that he relates to the players. He has his own ideas on how this is supposed to go. I think the interesting part of that whole concept that you just described is, the commitment to Bill. Right now, they have 3 people in the building that think they're head coaches. And Bill Belichick, who is the head coach, and Gerard, who I think has believed for a couple of years that he should be and could be a head coach right now. And I think Bill obviously has done it and believes the same. And then, I just worry about that relationship. If there's any friction there, I want there to be a good marriage. I want there to be loyalty. I think that's important. And who knows? We're, as you said, when we started this whole thing, just about some of the dysfunction in the locker room, I don't want that to carry over into the coaching staff, even as you move forward. I think you gotta everything has to be power washed, right? And then get it as clean and sparkly white as possible, because you're gonna get dirt. Things are gonna chip and break over the course of time. But I want things to be as clean as possible when they make the transition.
Okay, let's talk about maybe cleaning up the Patriots quarterback room in 2024. what's the best case scenario for them? I'm going to lay on you one scenario that I have considered. And I think this would be fun for our purposes. I'm not sure it would be what's best for the team. and you may understand why I say that as we get into it. I'm going to operate under the assumption that they're not going to be able to land one of the top 2 quarterbacks.
Yep.
Maybe that happens. Maybe they tank their way accidentally, purposefully, right. Tank their way into one of the top 2 slots. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So my scenario is it's March. It's free agency. You can't trade Mac Jones for anything worthwhile. So you say, Mac, you're on the team, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and add to the room here. You're going to sign Baker Mayfield to what would have to be a starter level contract. I mean, you're talking $20 million ish.
Yep.
Short term. And then you're going to draft a quarterback in the second round. And you hope that it's a deep enough class. You didn't get one of the top 2 guys, but there's a whole mess of guys. It might be 6 that are kind of in the next tier. And I'm sure that will sort itself out the closer we get to the draft. And you draft one of those in the second round, it's a little bit of a Jalen Hurts-ish model, right? Where it was Flacco, right? It was Flacco and they had drafted Hurts and that was basically their, was Wentz was still on the roster.
Yeah.
But then going into, so then was it Hurts' second year that they went into where it was Flacco and Hurts when we were down there for Patriots training camp? Boy, either way, the idea is you hope you land something in the second round. And if you don't, you have somebody there to stabilize it and you let Mac Jones and Baker Mayfield. This is why I say it might not be what's best for the team. Those are 2 interesting personalities there, working side by each. And you let one of those guys win that job and you hope the young guy figures it out. I just think you need to throw multiple pieces at that position this offseason. But what about you?
So once again, if it's me, they're all gone. Maybe Will Greer stays. Because who knows? If he just wanted the 3rd quarterback, maybe shown him enough that he could be the 2nd quarterback. Done with Mac. Done with Bailey.
Trade?
Yeah, if I get a 4th round pick, I'm taking it. If I get a 5th round pick, I'm taking it. If I get a 6th round pick, I'm probably taking it. Okay.
All right.
I don't think they'll do that because I think the money, obviously he's not making any money. So it makes sense to just wheel him back. But I'm with you on the rest of that plan, except instead of Baker Mayfield, I'm going higher. I'm aiming for Kirk Cousins. Now, I know that Kirk Cousins gets people all riled up, but he's a pro. I think as we've learned a little bit more about him, I think he's a good teammate. I think his teammates like him. He certainly has a better arm than your guy does by a long shot currently. And I think you can get back to respectability. I don't think you need to sign to a 4-year deal. I think this could be like a 2-year, $75 million with an option or something. I know. And then I'm still drafting a quarterback in the second round. Like you said, I like as I've already started to watch some of these guys, and obviously Caleb and Drake, as we mentioned, you're not getting. I don't believe you're going to be 1 and 2. And then I look at the guys like Penix and Bo Nix. Who else? Riley Leonard from Duke, although his stock maybe falling. A couple other guys, right?
Yeah.
But none of those guys to me, based on what I've seen so far, what I say if I'm picking 5th, I gotta have that guy. I'll be happy to wait until the top of round 2 and take what's left there and make that move. And then I have totally reworked my quarterback room. I feel like I can win with the quarterback that I just spent money on, and hopefully I can develop a quarterback like they did with, say, Jimmy or Jacoby, get somebody ready to be the next guy and actually have a real plan at that position, which they've struggled with that plan since before Tom left.
Well, listen, I like your plan, and I like Kirk Cousins. He is going to be, I would imagine, significantly more expensive than Baker Mayfield or Jacoby Brissett or Ryan Tannehill. These are guys that are scheduled to be free agents at that position this offseason. And so does that limit all the work you can do to replace the guys that you might be losing in free agency? And this is a perfect transition to take us to our next question. I want you to rank 1 to 5 Okay. I know you can count that high. I'm not worried about you at all as far as this math problem goes. 1 to 5, the most important free agents for the Patriots to sign. And I'm going to give you 5 names. Trent Brown, Mike Onwenu, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, and Kyle Duggar. Go.
So I'll work backwards. How about that? I'll start at 5.
Fancy.
Kendrick would be number 5. And I look, he's having a good year. I think he still makes some of the same mistakes he's made since he got here, but he's a playmaker when he gets the ball in his hands. Now, look, based on the situation with the knee, you can get him for a year, at a cheaper cost. And then, as we talk about money, maybe I slide him up the list a little bit. But like for me, coming off the ACL, knowing that it's usually year 2 coming off the ACL, he would be the bottom of my list priority-wise. Number 4, Duggar. I think he is what he is. And I think he's a fine player. I think he's a solid player. But I think he's still, same thing. He's sort of, I feel like he's plateaued as a player. I think it's the good that comes with it. There's the bad. I still don't think he's very good in coverage. I know he had an interception in the end zone. You could have had the interception in the end zone. I could have had the interception in the end zone. 2 other guys were there. They could have had the interception in the end zone, actually, if you look at the play again.
We're elite athletes, though, to be fair.
Yes, this is a good point. And I like Kyle. I think his teammates respect Kyle. But if Kyle's thinking that his contract is going to be north of $10 million a year, and I have Marte Mapu, draft him in the 3rd round, I kind of drafted him maybe with the thought that Kyle wasn't going to be in our price range, and that's how I was going to do it. So that's what I would do there. Hunter would be 3 for me. Hunter's a good pro. He's probably still a top 10 tight end, top 12 tight end, even though, the numbers, he's playing hurt. I think he's done an admirable job, but not a great blocker. There's some limitations to him. He's getting a little older. So I'd like to have him back just as a safety net at that position. And I don't really have much at that position. I don't have anything actually at that position, but that's how I'd go. Number 2 would be Trent. And I actually, when you first sent me the list, I thought Trent would be 1, but because there are no left tackles, and he's still a good left tackle. He's probably a top 10 left tackle, right? I mean, I kind of feel like that's where he is, but there's stuff that comes with that. And maybe if you're trying to power wash this thing, maybe that's part of it. But for the moment, as I was actually doing a mock draft the other day, just messing around, and they're 5th, I think, at this point. And so you see him mess around with the settings and do different things, and you don't get Caleb, you don't get Drake, you don't get Marvin Harrison. So then you're sitting there, and for me, it's the 2 tackles. It's the kid from Penn State, and it's the kid from Notre Dame. And the kid from Notre Dame, Altis, is making there's been a lot of talk about him lately. He's probably having maybe the better year of the 2. But then, okay, then there's my left. Is that my left tackle? Do I feel good about that? And if so, then that's why Onwenu was 1, because Mike's young. He's not a great player, but he's a good player. He's got the position versatility. He's good at guard. He's doing a nice job over a tackle. I thought he was actually outstanding against the Commanders. And I can look at that and say, I feel good if I have to give Mike Onwenu a 4-year deal for some real good money, that I'm not worried that Mike Onwenu is going to let himself go the road that Trent has done at various points where, as we saw him in the spring, come in at, 420 pounds or whatever the heck it was. I mean, massive, right? I don't worry about that with Mike. So that's why I would have Trent 2 and Mike 1.
You're going to be stunned to hear this. I think we have the exact same list.
Look at that.
Just a couple of great minds. I'm with you on Bourne and Duggar. The interesting thing about Duggar is in the Patriots trying to bring him back, or wanting to bring him back, is there actually are a variety of interesting free agent names at that safety position. And if they want a little bit more versatility, which is crazy to say, because all we talked about during the summer was that, wow, this is what a versatile group this is. They don't have a free safety.
Right.
So I think we thought they could get away with it. without one, it's not Jalen Mills. It's not Kyle Duggar. It's not Jabril Peppers. And Peppers, we'll maybe talk about him in a little bit here, a little bit more, but he's a true strong safety. So where does that leave Kyle? And would you rather not, make a play for, with all that cap space you have, Antoine Winfield Jr. and get a playmaking smart guy in the
right.
back end of your secondary, instead of re-signing Kyle Duggar. Now, I like Kyle Duggar in terms of like some of the intangible stuff that he brings, and I think he's a quiet leader, though he would admit he's not going to be the voice of the locker room anytime soon. He's also 27. Here's a wild fact about Kyle Duggar. Kyle Duggar, believe it or not, second round pick 2022, older than, by almost a full year, 2018 first round pick Lamar Jackson.
It's crazy.
So if you're someone who sees Kyle Duggar as a young up and coming piece and we're just sort of scratching the surface, you might be right. In terms of NFL miles logged, he's not, like Devin McCourty at the end, but he is probably closer to what he will be than maybe we think. So I have him down the bottom of the list too. I like, the Trent versus Onwenu conversation. I mean, if I'm the Patriots, I'm also just looking at it, even though you have all the cap space you do, I think both tackle spots are really important. Like, I think they're as close as they've ever been. The left tackle makes more money, generally speaking, but you need two good ones. And to me, Trent, I think, is going to be the far more expensive piece. And so that sort of edges, and the age factor edges Onwenu ahead of Brown for me. And then I have Hunter Henry there. I just like the cut of Hunter Henry's jib. I think for a team that's lacking leadership, especially on offense, whatever comes next, I would like Hunter Henry to be a part of that. I don't know what it is. I don't know exactly what the offense looks like, but I think I like the way he's wired enough to maybe even franchise tag him, because that tag number for tight ends isn't massive, and move forward with him.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Hunter and the cut of his jib and the leadership thing. One of the things that I found very striking this year, and I was tweeting about it a little bit, much to some fans' dismay, the fact that David Andrews, Dietrich Wise, and Hunter Henry are often the first three voices that we hear post-game before the head coach, which didn't used to be the way it was. And somewhere along the line that changed. And quite frankly, when you're going through what you're going through, the first guy I should hear from shouldn't be David or Dietrich or Hunter. It should be the coach. And he puts those guys in crappy situations every Sunday after these losses, where they have to be the ones that answer questions, some of which they can't even answer, because you're going to ask the coach that. And maybe if the coach says something, then you turn around and give it to the player and let the player respond to what the coach said. Nope, they're getting these questions first. So they're almost getting treated like they're the head coach, even though clearly they're not. Another example, 2 minutes after the press conference on Wednesday, let's leak the J.C. Jackson news that J.C. Jackson is not going to go with us to Germany because he was late to a team meeting on Saturday. And then an hour later, Jack Jones also confirmed to be late for that meeting. And the guys that weren't benched, they were actually benched. And it wasn't about Sean Wade, Mike Pellegrino. It was about the two guys who got benched.
That narrative, I never agreed with that narrative.
Yeah. I mean, okay, Mike, thanks for lying to my face. So I look at that, and then it happens on Wednesday, where it's David and Mac and Hunter who have to answer about J.C. Jackson. Like, that's not their thing. They shouldn't have to do that. And look, he's done this forever. That part of the equation, the leaking after press conferences, has been going on for as long as I can remember. But they were also not 2-7 and, a complete train wreck. They had Tom Brady and, Gronkowski, and they were winning divisions and AFC's title, AFC championships and all that nonsense. So like,
and you had somebody, Mike, you had somebody in Devin McCourty that you could go, if something happened, it felt like every position group had a guy.
Yep.
And I don't think the secondary has a guy. I don't know who it is. Listen.
Hey, yesterday we talked in the locker room. So, you had the three offensive guys. at the podium in the late morning, and then 4:45 availability, and briefly saw Jabril Peppers. He didn't stop to talk, and he's been great. So I'm not knocking him for it. I don't know what was going on. Maybe I had to get a lift in, but it was Sean Wade and it was Jalen Mills. So Sean Wade's got to answer for, well, what's going on with JC, and then Jalen, who hasn't played a ton and is sort of expressing dissatisfaction about that. Adrian Phillips used to be a guy you could talk to, but he's not playing very much anymore. I think he doesn't. I'm not. Don't come to me. That's not my thing. John Jones wasn't in there, so it's an interesting scenario. But you're right. There's a lack of voices in certain position groups that I don't know how much it contributes to all that's happened, but it definitely plays a role somewhere somehow.
Last thing I want to ask you. I've kept you longer than I anticipated, but I just love talking to my guy, and so this has been fun for me. Did we lose the Johnny Pesky ball, by the way?
No, it's right here.
Gone? Oh, it's right there. Okay. All right. Crystal ball.
Yep.
Looking forward, looking ahead. Mike Giardi, you would say that the 5 best pieces for the Patriots core moving forward that are under contract. So we just talked about a bunch of guys. Maybe you would include an Onwenu or a Hunter Henry as, guys you would like to keep around. But let's talk about the guys that are under contract. Are there 5 that you would call core guys? Because I believe you were presented with this question on BST recently.
Yeah.
With Felger and Hawley. And they asked you to lay out a list, and it was a surprisingly short answer. But now we have a little bit more space and time. Let's stretch our limbs and let's try to come up with 5 here.
I'll tell you what, when I saw the question, I couldn't come up with 5. I could make some arguments for guys at the back end, but Christian Gonzalez is an obvious one, right? Like he's the guy. You're going to do it. Pop. I like Pop. Whether he becomes like the next great slot receiver you have, like he's already proving that he's an NFL. He's someone that has to be contended with, again, he's getting double, which only speaks to everything that's gone on around him. Maybe he's not that guy, but I think he's someone that, I want him around. I like his attitude. I like his approach. He's someone. David Andrews for me, and it's much like you said, he's getting a little older, and I think Jake Andrews was drafted, and you can kind of see a scenario in which maybe that's the direction they'd like to go. But if I'm blowing this thing up and I'm starting, he's someone I want in the room. This would be like keeping McCourty the extra years, a couple of those pieces that Bill, Slater is another one, obviously, right? Like those are guys that David Andrews is in that category. I'd want David to be part of that. I think Jabril has shown a ton of leadership and playmaking ability this year. He's not, PFF loves him. He's done some great things this year. I don't know that he's what PFS says he is, but I like what he's brought to the table. I like the energy that he brings, the physicality. Like that to me is a guy that, okay, guys, see how he does it, see how hard he plays. Like that's what I want. And then that's kind of where I stopped. I could make, hey, Cole Strange had a good game last week. Okay, well, that's one. Let's Barmore. So I think Barmore's been awesome in the last 4 weeks. But I didn't think he was awesome for much of the first 5 or 6 weeks. And I think that's sort of been what he's become the last 2 years. I know there's some injury problems last year. If he can continue this, then Barmore jumps into the list. He might even jump to the front of the list. But I need more. Show me more. But that's God. I like Ramondre, but they're running backs. I can get another running back. Yeah.
So it's
Bentley and Tavai, nice players. They've had nice years. Okay, but could I live without them? Yeah, I think I could.
Yeah, I was wondering where you might go with Bentley because he's on my list of first out. He didn't make my top 5, but he, I think, deserves to be in the conversation just because, again, if you stick with Mayo, I think having that link, having somebody who can call a defense that you would like at its best to be relatively complicated, and who does bring a certain level of toughness that not a lot of linebackers in today's game do. He's completely willing to be that downhill, bigger bodied guy that can take on a guard and make a tackle. He's not the 2023 version of the NFL's best linebacker. And I bet if you asked, any number of national analysts, I bet he wouldn't come in the top 12 in terms of guys at his position. But I bet if you asked Mayo and others on the staff, they would look at it and say, well, sure. Yeah, he's not going to be like a Tampa 2 guy that runs down the middle of the field with a slot receiver. But, Fred Warner, is going to have some trouble doing some of the things that we ask our linebackers to do. So, he has value here. And so he's sort of sniffing the top 5 for me. But we have I have all 4 guys you had. I had Gonzalez. I had Jabril Peppers, who I think is, and I don't even, did he make your core list or not really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I just think he's become a real emotional leader. And I look at core guys, Mike, as not necessarily leaders. They don't have to be the Matthew Slater or the Devin McCourty or even the David Andrews. They can be that. And I have Andrews in my top 5 for that reason. But do they give you effort? Do they show resiliency? Are they intense competitors? I think this locker room has been, I think in the pursuit of landing players who are coachable and smart and do all the right things, I think in some ways they have lost their edge. I don't know how many players in the locker room bring the edge that you need to be a winning football team.
Peppers
and I think Peppers gives you a little bit of both. I think he does all the right things. He's tough and he's got a little bit of a screw loose, which guys have talked about before. But I think that's a good thing. That you need some of that. You look at the Patriots of the early aughts, how many guys did they have that were just vicious competitors that were, yes, they were smart. Yes, they were versatile. Yes, they were tough, but they wanted to stomp on you on game day. And that to me is Jabril Peppers. I think you need that. I have Pop Douglas. I have Andrews, as I mentioned. I did put Barmore in there for almost a similar reason. They don't all have to be Boy Scouts. They don't all have to be captains.
Yep.
But at that position, where, again, you might be more willing and more accustomed to dealing with players that are a little crazy on the defensive line than anywhere else, Barmore fits the bill to me. And he's been so good of late. Like, I'd probably just – I'm a victim of recency bias here. You're right. It's been the last month, plus.
Phil, I just did a breakdown for him based on this last game. I couldn't – as I was watching the game over, I couldn't take my eyes off him like he does. And the thing about him in recent weeks that I find really encouraging, because I think we've always known he's a good interior pass rusher, he's playing the run a lot better now. So it's not perfect, but like down in, down out effort against the run is, like, to me, that's the growth. So, like, again, show it to me for the next 8 weeks. And you're, like I said, you could end up being, if I was ranking him, you might end up being number 1 on the list because he can be unblockable at times.
I remember talking to Andrews, who you and I both know well. He's been with the team so long now. One of the most approachable guys, even on the days where he speaks, he's totally open and willing to talk to people, especially people that I think he knows. And I remember trying to talk to him before a practice. One of the rare opportunities we had to talk to players before practice. And I remember going up to David Andrews, and it's the only time he's ever said this to me, but it was basically something along the lines of, "Hey man, I just can't right now." I was like, "Hey, everything all right?" It's like, I just got to get ready to block Christian Barmore all practice. I can't. and it spoke volumes. That one comment is just like, this guy is such a problem. This is a veteran center who has won Super Bowls, who has seen the best of the best, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just about to have like a really tough day out there. I just don't want to do it, but I."
Well, remember they had the training camp fight 2 years ago when some of us surmised that maybe Barmore was going. They were supposed to be going at 90%. That Barmore might have been going the full 100 and was really killing the offense. And David was like, "All right, enough. But yeah,
so I agree. What you get again. That's what I want. I want that for my defensive lineman. I think like you start to veer into like Jack. You don't want what you're getting. Listen, I get it. It's a fine line I'm trying to walk here. You don't want what you're getting from Jack Jones and J.C. Jackson, but you do like what you've seen lately from Barmore, what you've seen from Jabril Peppers all year. I think even dating back to last year, he's just healthy now. I had Keon White on my list, Mike, but he still hasn't. He had a great early part of the season. I had Ninkovich on the podcast. Said this guy could be really special. It hasn't fully developed just yet. Dietrich Wise, maybe he's on the list for some too, but getting up there a little bit. And I think Keon White is eventually going to probably kind of bump him from the role that he has right now. So anyway, I think we came up with a good 5-4 in your case. A 4 and a shrug of the shoulders is what we got from Mike Giardi on the 5 core pieces for the Patriots. We've covered so much ground here. Michael, thank you for being with us. This was a lot of fun. Let's do it again soon.
Always a pleasure, Phil.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/MBCSB and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Massachusetts. Hope is here. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame moneyline wager required. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling helpline ma.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234.
Great stuff there from Mike, and may for some paint a bit of a dire picture how we discussed at the end who some of these core pieces are for the Patriots moving forward. But I think this is an opportunity for them to really reset across the board and make some fresh decisions in the draft room, during free agency, a couple months ahead of the draft, to really dictate and determine the direction this franchise is going to go moving forward. Not necessarily in terms of the talent and how good they're going to be and how competitive and how close to contention they will be able to reach in 2024, but what's the direction? What do you value? What do you want to be? This is a chance for you to not start from scratch, because unfortunately for them and for some fans who may love to just start with a blank slate in 2024 and move from there, you're not going to start from scratch, but it is a chance to really emphasize that which you believe is most important, to be as relevant as you can, as quickly as you can get there. So a core, in my opinion, that's made up of a top flight, what looks like a top flight corner in Christian Gonzalez, a hard-hitting box safety who can lead defensively in Jabril Peppers, a defensive lineman who has rare traits in Christian Barmore, a slot receiver and a center who are going to help usher forward maybe a new era with a new quarterback, a young quarterback who's looking for security in terms of his protection and his understanding of opposing defenses, something that David Andrews can help him with. Hopefully there's some capable tackles on either side of him as well, but also a slot receiver that can be his go-to guy in critical situations. I'm not sure Demario Douglas is there just yet, but if he can fine-tune some of the route running, some of the pacing, some of the details that we've seen that have been lacking at times with Pop Douglas, and I've been on Pop Douglas since they drafted him. I thought he had a real chance to make an impact, and he's exceeded even my expectations. But if you can get some of those little things cleaned up, then maybe he is that security blanket moving forward. Maybe he is the next in line in that long line of slot receivers who were not only really talented players, but help make the quarterback, whether it was Tom Brady or anybody else, just feel comfortable by being on the field, being in the right place at the right time. So I actually like that core that we identified for New England moving forward. We'll see what pieces they can add to it this coming off season. We're a long way from that right now, but midway point of the season, good time to zero in on those sorts of questions. Okay, now to our Patriots Talk podcast follow-up. I asked Kevin Clark just a few days ago, is this Patriots offense a dinosaur? You look at the Giants offense, you look at the Raiders under Josh McDaniels, and you look at the Patriots this year, 3 of the worst and least efficient offenses in football. When it comes to success rate, they rank the Giants at 30th, the Patriots at 24th, and the Raiders, surprisingly perhaps, at 13th. That's in success rate. Now, in terms of EPA per play, it's even a little bit worse. The Giants are 31st, the Patriots are 30th, and the Raiders are 25th. So let's first get to this answer from Kevin Clark on whether or not he thinks this style of play can work in 2023 and beyond. And then we'll dig deep on some numbers and identify just how modern this Patriots offense and some of these others really are.
I guess my question is, where has the wrinkle been? Like I mentioned, all of the little innovations they've had over the past 25 years and going back even further, when you consider the lineage of that offense, what's been the new innovation? I haven't seen one. And you think about what Mike McDaniel does on every single weekend. And it's interesting because I'm of the opinion that play calling in general is overrated. And I know that seems like a hot take, but like 95% of a play doing well is effort and execution. And then the bells and whistles are on top of that. But in a league where a lot of teams have depth, a lot of teams have quarterbacks who can throw the ball, guess what? Everybody has effort and execution. So then the tiebreaker becomes, what are you doing with that effort and execution? And Kyle Shanahan is working miracles with it. Mike McDaniel is turning Tua into an MVP candidate. All around the league, and someone like Josh Allen in the division, I don't think Dorsey is lighting the world on fire as a play caller, but they've got skill guys everywhere, and Josh Allen is a special athlete at that position. So everybody has an advantage over the Patriots. And I just felt like, my favorite game that Belichick ever coached was the Jacoby Brissett against the Texans game, where it was the 4-game suspension for Brady. Garoppolo gets hurt, and it was a Thursday night game against Bill O'Brien, a pretty good Texans team. And we were just like, all right, you know what? Belichick is just going to say, he's just going to get in his bag and say, I'm going to win this game in the weirdest possible way. And nobody knew who Jacoby Brissett was back. I mean, they knew him from college, but he didn't have a long track record. And he just went out and they just did a play calling masterclass. And they just said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to win this game. I've always felt Brissett is not this. But I've always felt like one of the reasons I liked the Cam Newton signing was I always felt like there was more creativity with Bill Belichick than Brady. I know this sounds crazy, but Brady, there's only a couple things you could do with Brady. Go out there and let him cook, just like, hey, Tom, you got this, go ahead. And the reason I like the Cam Newton signing, especially off the bat, is that I felt like Belichick was always kind of in press conferences fantasizing about a running quarterback and talking about Tebow and the single wing and all of this stuff. And he loved it. And again, like, I just think that the world, once you're after Brady, the world was available to him from a scheme perspective. And this is true of Josh McDaniels. It's true of all of these Patriot guys, Joe Judge in New York. And it just felt like they went the lazy option. And they got in. I think Mac Jones had a chance. I think he processed well, and I think he gets rid of the ball quickly, which she thinks a lot of young quarterbacks don't do. But I just felt like he went the creativity in the offense just never developed in the way I thought it would. And that is disappointing me. And I agree with your phrasing. It's a little bit of a dinosaur as far as offenses go.
Kevin makes great points there, as he always does. The creativity in the Patriots scheme and schemes like it. Where is it? Especially when the league is making such great use of scrambling ability behind center. And that's something we talked about on the Next podcast before the season began, just how valuable those quarterback scrambles are when it comes to extending drives and actually putting points on the board. It is massive. It is massive. Now, you don't necessarily need it. Tua Tagovailoa, of course, leading one of the best offenses in football right now. He's not necessarily a super fast, super athletic, super scrambler. That's just not his game. He can do it some. How about somebody like Jared Goff? The Lions offense is 10th in the league in terms of success rate right now. He's nobody's idea of an athletic quarterback, but they make it work. Brock Purdy, throw him on the list. Number 2 offense in football in terms of success rate this year. Not an athlete. Not wowing anyone with his physical traits. And the reason I keep referring back to success rate is because I feel as though, at least through the first half of the 2023 season, that is the best indicator as to which offenses are best in football. I'll run down the list right now very quickly with you. But it's number 1, it's Buffalo. Number 2, San Francisco. Number 3, Miami. Then you have Baltimore, Philadelphia, Dallas, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Seattle, Detroit, and Jacksonville. Those teams all have winning records. You have 7 division leaders there. And even though the Bills are at the top of the list and they are currently out of the playoff picture, I don't think anyone would argue that it's because of their offense. Is it perfect on that side? No, of course not. But It's one of the best offenses in football, and it's the pieces they've lost on the defensive side that, in my opinion, have really held that group back. So those, to me, are 11 of the best teams in football. They're 11 of the best offenses in football by a number of different metrics, but success rate is the one that we focused on there. And I wrote a piece, if you haven't seen it already, on NBCSportsBoston.com this week about looking at turnover margin. The Patriots are near the bottom of the league in terms of turnover margin, but that stat, at least as things stand right now, and it may just be a small sample, does not necessarily correlate to overall team success the way you think it might, right? You've got teams like the Cardinals that are ahead of the Chiefs and the Dolphins in terms of turnover margin. Carolina Panthers, same way. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not a good football team, are near the top of the list this year in terms of turnover margin. So it's all over the map. Whereas offensive success rate seems to correlate to overall team success. That's a huge chunk of some of the game's best teams. 11 teams, and it wouldn't surprise me, even if they aren't all within the playoffs right now, wouldn't surprise me if all 11 made the postseason, and most of the division winners in football end up near the top of the list in terms of success rate this year. So why do I give you all that? Well, because I wanted to look at the best offenses in football, how the Patriots, Raiders, and Giants specifically, because of their coaches, and we just looked at it through weeks 1 through 8, so before Josh McDaniels was fired in Vegas, and just see where they rank in terms of some of the categories that, for me, and I think for others, would be a sign of what modern football is about. Now, we've completely removed the quarterback scrambling aspect to this, even though Daniel Jones is a pretty mobile guy and has had his share of scrambles and valuable scrambles at that in years past. But we've taken that part of it out. And we're just going to look at the scheme, because I think for the Patriots perspective, you're wondering, and you might be wondering this right now, is Bill O'Brien the right guy for this team? Is that the kind of offense the Patriots should want moving forward? Is that what Robert Kraft should want moving forward? When he looks at this, does he look at the Patriots offense as dinosaur? And does he look at some of these other teams with more mobile players? And does he say, we need that? And I need somebody who can coach that, who's shown that he can coach that. Well, number one, you kind of have that guy already, because Deshaun Watson did his best work under Bill O'Brien, and of course could kill you with his legs in scramble situations, in design quarterback run situations. And so Bill O'Brien can do that. He's shown that he can do that. And that's why I believe that he should be the guy moving forward, as we discussed with Mike Giardi at offensive coordinator for the Patriots. Okay, but in terms of the scheme, how modern is it? I'll give you some Patriots, Giants, and Raiders rankings. Play action. Giants are actually third this year in terms of play action dropbacks, according to Sports Info Solutions. All these numbers according to Sports Info Solutions and SumerSports.com. Patriots 25th in terms of play action, the Raiders 28th. Now, this particular number not necessarily correlated to overall offensive success. The teams that lead the league in play action dropbacks this year, the Minnesota Vikings, fine. The Baltimore Ravens, okay. And the Arizona Cardinals. So it not necessarily an indicator of what's working best in 2023. So just food for thought there in terms of those Patriots and Raiders rankings near the bottom of the list. I think that's also due in part to game flow. And if a team is down, as the Patriots and Raiders have been often this year, typically play action goes out the window. So how about RPOs? Maybe a little bit better indication of where the most modern offenses are. The Giants, 7th this year in the NFL. So not exactly fitting the dinosaur label. How about the Patriots? 12th in terms of RPO dropbacks this year. Patriots well in the top half of the NFL. The Raiders and Josh McDaniels, we know that was not a big part of his scheme here in New England. Same is true in Vegas, or it was while he was there. They ranked 24th in RPO attempts this year. Now the Eagles, Bengals, and Bills, 3 of those best offenses in football when it comes to success rate, and 3 of the best teams in football, I think we all thought coming into the year, and I think they may end up there if the Bills can get it figured out defensively. Those are the top 3 teams in terms of RPO plays to this point in the season. Jet motion. When we think of motion this year, we think of what the best offenses are doing. How does your head not go to Miami? And they are at the top of the list in terms of using jet motion in 2023. The Lions and Niners are 2 and 3. Again, two of the best offenses in football in that top 11 in success rate group. They're at the top of the list when it comes to jet motion. The Patriots, you might be surprised, 10th in the league in jet motion plays this year. The Raiders, shockingly to me, are 12th. And the Giants are right behind him at 13th. So again, might not fit what we think of as the Patriots offense when it comes to that use of motion, and specifically fast motion at the snap. How about any motion at all? The Dolphins again at the top of the list. Then there's the Chiefs and the Commanders, a Chiefs adjacent offense with Eric Bieniemy running the show there in Washington. Very pass happy there in Washington. The Patriots are 9th in terms of their use of motion in the passing game in 2023. The Raiders are 12th, and the Giants, are 18th. So again, closer to the top half of the league and within the top 10 if you're the Patriots. Maybe not what you expected. I think what we're painting here is a picture of an offense that is a little bit more modern than you might have anticipated. How about no huddle? The Giants 4th in no huddle snaps this year. Patriots 15th, the Raiders 31st. So that's one area where the Raiders clearly near the bottom of the league. So RPOs, no huddle, that's not Josh McDaniels' game, but it has been Bill O'Brien's. Even if they're not at the top of the list to a much larger, much greater degree. And teams that lead no huddle are actually the same teams that lead in play action, which was surprising to me, according to Sports Info Solutions. The Vikings, Ravens, and Cardinals at the top of the list in terms of no huddle snaps this year. So listen, you might be looking at those three teams and saying three very forward-thinking organizations. When I look at all three of those teams, the Vikings, Ravens, and Cardinals, I think all three have shown, at least it's early in terms of the Cardinals' tenure and the individuals who are leading that organization right now. But I think all three have shown a willingness to lean on advanced analytics. I think they've been very open about that in terms of the front offices, both in Minnesota and Baltimore. And Arizona, again, I think they're sort of establishing who they are, what they want to do. But you're looking at a team that has had basically nothing in terms of quarterback play. That's not to disparage anyone, Josh Dobbs included. He clearly has exceeded everyone's expectations here in 2023. But they basically got rid of the guy that started for them all summer, and Colt McCoy, and started fresh right at the start of the season. Now they're starting fresh again, and they're about to bring Kyler Murray back. I think they've just been trying to squeeze as much as they can. Drew Petzing, Massachusetts guy, Drew Petzing and that offensive staff just been trying to squeeze as much as they can out of that Cardinals offense. And so they're trying things like no huddle, like play action, try to put their offense in the best position to succeed. So even if they're not one of the best offenses, I think those three groups, the Vikings, Ravens, and Cardinals, are pretty forward thinking. So it doesn't surprise me to see them at the top of the list in terms of no huddle snaps. Let's go to pass rate over expected. Now, this might be the best indicator as to Patriots style offenses or Patriots minded play callers. Maybe leaning a little bit too much on past approaches. The Raiders are 20th in the NFL in terms of pass rate over expected. The Patriots 21st and the Giants 29th. Now, that could just be confidence in the passing game overall. And I think some of these numbers are indicative of a lack of confidence in the quarterback play. You know, I think it's safe to say with all three of these teams, they haven't gotten the quarterback play that they want. So if, for example, instead of the Giants being part of this three-team look that we're digging into right now, and it were the Houston Texans of 2019, I think some of the numbers would be a little bit different. Would the Texans have a higher pass rate over expected with Deshaun Watson at the height of his powers and Bill O'Brien running the show there? I think they would. So I think some of this, it's impossible to escape what these teams are choosing to do from a schematic perspective. It's impossible to break that link between that and what it's yielding in terms of play calls and the quarterbacks that are running these offenses, right? So the fact that you've got lower level quarterbacks based on their pick a number, based on their performance this year and in recent years. Some of these numbers are going to look pretty low. And the pass rate over expected leaders in the NFL, the Bengals and Chiefs are 1 and 2. Those are arguably the 2 best quarterbacks in football. Now, number 3 is the Commanders. There's Eric Bieniemy doing his thing again. They do not want to run the ball in Washington at all. But number 4 is Buffalo. So again, you might have the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL there. How about average depth of target? Like some people might look at, okay, if you're a modern offense, you throw the ball, not only do you throw the ball, but you throw the ball down the field. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Just look at Miami. It's about as modern as it gets. And their motion numbers, we just rattle them off. They're near the top of the list. But in terms of average depth of target, the teams there, 1, 2, and 3 are Tennessee, Green Bay, and then there's Philadelphia, which has some elite receiver talents that they just trust to throw the ball down the field to in almost any situation. If Jalen Hurts gets into trouble, he's completely comfortable throwing 50-50 balls to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But in terms of the 3 teams we're looking at, average depth of target, the Raiders are actually pretty high up there. They're 13th, Patriots 17th, so right in the middle of the league, and the Giants are 26th. Now, there are some other indicators that would suggest these are some older style offenses that we're looking at here. For instance, in terms of jumbo rate, so getting an extra offensive lineman on the field, the Giants are 3rd in the league as far as that goes. Now, the Eagles are 1st, and I would argue they're one of the more modern offenses that we have in the NFL. So there's a balance there. They're at the top of the list or near it in terms of RPOs run, but they're also at the top of the list in terms of jumbo rate. So that's playing to your personnel. They should be doing that. The Giants are 3rd, though, in terms of jumbo rate. How about I formation rate? You think of that as, oh my gosh, you're really turning back the clock if you're using a fullback and you're going with the I formation. The Raiders are 1st in the NFL in I formation rate. The Giants are 14th, so middle of the pack, and the Patriots are 19th. And so, they're not necessarily looking to turn this into the mid-90s the way Josh McDaniels has been. Again, now we're getting closer to the end of our statistical look here. I think we've painted the picture of the Patriots maybe not being the dinosaur that even I might have suggested that they are with Kevin Clark, just because that link between the coordinators and their backgrounds, the numbers would suggest that's really not who they are. The Raiders, meanwhile, I think some of the numbers would suggest that is who they are and who they were under Josh McDaniels. The 2-back stuff, the lack of no huddle, the lack of play action, the lack of RPOs, that might be the dinosaur. I think Bill O'Brien has advanced this thing, if you want to call it the Patriots offense. He's been at Alabama. We know he was at Penn State. He's in Houston with an athletic quarterback with a number of different guys that he's trying to wring stuff out of, and Brock Osweiler and Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brandon Weeden and Brian Hoyer. The list goes on and on. You better get modern if that's what you're working with. And obviously his experience in the college game is there. And that, I think, has helped produce what we're seeing in 2023, where this is a relatively modern style offense. Empty rate, spread it out, go 5 wide, nobody in the backfield, shotgun. Patriots are 9th in empty rate this year. The Raiders, they're 30th. Again, there's that juxtaposition between the Josh McDaniels offense and the Bill O'Brien offense. They are not the same. So that was meant to be a quick statistical look at the Patriots and the Raiders and the Giants under Brian Daboll as well. But a few of the takeaways are Patriots more modern than you think. Raiders still sort of, at least under Josh McDaniels, on the other end of that spectrum in terms of modern offense. I think all 3 offenses hindered by their quarterback play. And I think all 3 try to, and I think this is a trait of the Patriots-minded offensive coordinators, is they try to do what is best for their quarterbacks. And they try to make their quarterbacks as comfortable as possible, and they try to mold the scheme to that quarterback. And we've seen it from Bill O'Brien. I think part of the reason Jimmy Garoppolo was imported was because Josh McDaniels knew from his experience with Jimmy Garoppolo that scheme could work for that player. So the quarterbacks are impacting some of the numbers here, and I would expect a lot of those to shift if and when the quarterback situations shift moving forward, whether it's in New York or in New England or wherever Josh McDaniels ends up next. And finally, just when it comes to the future of the Patriots specifically, again, I'll reiterate, I think they have their guy to run their offense. what the Patriots have dealt with this year in terms of being at the bottom of the league in a lot of different statistical categories, I don't put that on Bill O'Brien. I don't put that on an aging, out-of-touch scheme. That's not what he's doing. I put it on personnel, and I put it on talent. And I would put maybe some of it on the newness of the scheme and players getting adjusted to it, especially young players, especially the quarterback. But it's going to be hard for any offense to be able to function and function to a high level with the level of talent that the Patriots have and with the number of injuries that they experienced, especially on the offensive line early in the year. I think that has gotten settled down. But now you're dealing with a receiver group and a quarterback that just haven't been up to snuff in 2023. And so that's the explanation for the numbers. To me, it's not Bill O'Brien. And furthermore, when it comes to the future of the Patriots, if you're Robert Kraft, do you want to bring Josh McDaniels back? Now, I would be open to it just because I think he's a really smart offensive mind. And I think he is a good quarterbacks coach. I think we've seen young quarterbacks develop under McDaniels' tutelage. But if you ever wanted him as the play caller moving forward, say Bill O'Brien gets a job somewhere else, would you want Josh McDaniels? Would he be willing to adapt? I think some of the things that we saw in Vegas, when he given the opportunity to basically start fresh and mold that thing however he wanted. He has Derek Carr, he gets rid of Derek Carr, he brings in Jimmy Garoppolo. He doesn't draft a young quarterback that is used to running RPOs in college. He doesn't draft a mobile quarterback. He continues to use the I formation at the highest rate in the league. Play action is down. RPOs are down. Motion is down relative to some of these other teams we're talking about. You know, they're 18th in the league in terms of pass plays while using motion. So it's not bottom of the league, but, you know, no huddle. They're near the bottom of the league. They're 31st. Is that what you would want? That would be my question. As much as I respect Josh McDaniels as an offensive coach and as a quarterback's coach specifically, is that the kind of scheme that you believe can have success given what's coming into the league and what some of these college players are accustomed to in 2023 and beyond? All right, let's put a cork in it there. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Adam Jacey for helping produce this thing. John the Skull Crusher Henry, as always, appreciate his guidance. Appreciate Mike Giardi for being on with us. Appreciate Kevin Clark for being on the Patriots Talk podcast earlier this week and sparking a thought in my brain that helps lead to some of the takeaways that I just shared with you here today. Really appreciate you all. Make sure to tune into next week's Next Pats. We're going to have a bye-week edition of the Next Pats podcast following this Patriots game in Germany. Are they still a 2-win team by then? Does it feel like they're at least steering this thing in the right direction, maybe as a 3-win team going into what I believe is a much-needed break? We'll talk about all that and much more on next week's Next Pats. We'll talk to you.